Welcome to the latest Doors of Trithius dev blog. Today I am working on redesigning character creation for the game. So that means all the settings that you choose before you get into the game. What you're looking at right now is how it currently exists. And all it really is just one option. You pick a class and you get a starting skill, an ability, and some items, and that's it. And what I would love to do is extend this to have a lot more options. Let players get some more decision making. Kind of been going back and forth in my mind for several weeks now, trying to figure out exactly how to nail this down. It's almost terrifying as a game designer to make a decision and limit the game in some way, because any decision you make seems to cut something off. So today will be me grappling through this. I thought, hey, why not make a video showing the process, and maybe that'll help me stay focused and get through this, get through doing this, and I can show off to other game developers how maybe something useful about how I go about things, and to those interested in the project, they can kind of get a look behind the scenes. Yeah, let's get into it. A few weeks ago, when I was really starting to think about character creation, I had written this design document, which I highly recommend to anyone designing a system, working on a game, or really designing anything. If you have a potential solution, even if you're not really sure about it, write it down. Because the minute you write it down, you've got something concrete, something you can share with other people, something to think about and respond to. You're not just kind of stuck floating with all these different ideas. Get something on paper, get something you can look at and analyze, get your reasoning out there. And it was through this process, it was an okay design, but it was through writing this down I realized that there were some issues with this. The original design here, we even have some UI mockups. You'd select a class, a major or minor skill, you'd select an ability, kind of a wizard user interface, so the player would be like entering this info, clicking next, then they would pick their ability, click next, and then we had this perk system where they would select a difficulty and they would get so many points to spend on starting perks based off that difficulty. And we had quite a list of perks written out here, potential perks for this system. But it was through trying to design this and write it out that some issues started to emerge. And this is kind of what I'm getting back to today, where, for example, looking at this, you start with a major and a minor skill. Cool. But there's something a little weird about this. If we want this cohesive RPG world, why would we allow a player to, say, major in like cooking and brewing, and then on the next page they select a starting ability of some mercenary warrior? Like, how does this character make sense? Why would they have I'm like this excellent cook who has a sword / ability, for example? That was one issue with this. And this perk system too, while it can make interesting gameplay, it can be pretty goofy. And it's also very hard to balance hundreds of perks. And some players love the variety and the options. But as far as possible, I would love to start from a more designed and planned and engaging experience, and not have to try to, especially when we're designing so much more content, consider all these other options. And there's ways we can have fun versions of gameplay without, and potentially like fun classes that could have some of these perks, without every time you make a character being able to create from this huge list. This just started to feel a little gimmicky to me, where I want something a bit more serious, something more packaged, something more planned, something more not just throwing in every option. And that was the issue with this design. And that came out of making this document. So I highly recommend, as you work through ideas, to just get them on paper, make a little mock-up in Paint. It doesn't have to look great. And so you can show it to other people and you can just really think through it. One of the things I like to do if I'm designing a system, especially if I'm stuck, is take it back to fundamentals. What is actually going on here? It's important to build on stable ground. And when I think about creating a character in an RPG, particularly a roguelike, what occurs to me is the ultimate output, for the most part, is stats. And I'm calling these core stats. This is what is going to dictate the player's power in-game. This is what they're trying to get. And the question is, how do these stats get increased? So typically lots of RPGs will have some numbers, often like an attribute or maybe stats specific to their race or their equipment. And these will go into some calculation, and these numbers get increased and they go into some calculation and they output to the actual stat. And this is the thing the player is actually concerned with. This is why they're putting on better equipment. This is why they're increasing their agility. Is they actually, what they're really concerned with is, hey, in this case, dodge chance. If I'm being attacked by an enemy, what is the chance I'm not going to get hit? Like when it comes down to it, especially for combat, this is what they care about: their dodge chance, their accuracy, their damage, their health, movement speed, that kind of thing. And there's lots of ways to increase these numbers, and there's lots of different methods. And the question is, for character creation, how is that going to affect these? Some of the other options we're considering is decisions that would affect their stats. So a character with a lot of health versus more health, or more dodge versus less dodge. But also we're considering traits, which would be little perks, plus or minuses the player could choose. This has been done in a lot of games. I'll maybe talk more about this later, whether this will be in the game or not. Also, their starting items, their starting ability. We like to give the player an ability when he gets into game, so at least he has something on his hotbar to use. And that can be an ability that maybe helps sustain a certain playstyle. And starting skills is the big one we want to add. The Doors of Trithius is very skill focused in terms of like your quarter mastery, your botany, your cooking, all your skills. Like, can we have the character make some decision that gets them off on a certain track? So if they want to be a cook, maybe they could pick cooking at the start of the game, and they would start with a good cooking level. And the question is not only what are the decisions to be made in these categories, but how to group them. Like if we have a wizard, for example, you might start with some magic skill, start with some magical ability, start with stats that would make sense for a wizard. That kind of thing, where we want to package this set of decisions in a way that makes sense to a player. After some further thought and some discussion with others, I believe we have a solution. First thing is, no changes to stats. That's too much for right now. If we're going to do an overhaul, we'll do that as a separate update. The main idea here is for class creation to allow selecting within these items, within these categories, but with constraints. So it's not total nonsense, but it makes sense with the background. And here is some, to help explain, here's some examples. So you could see here with this street brawler, let's say you selected street brawler, there you can pick any starting skills. Whereas if you pick the Squire's Apprentice, you would start with one skill pre-selected and you get to pick another. So why this is awesome is what we can do is still allow the characters to make some decisions, but the decisions they make changes with the class. So in easier class, we're going to pre-pick some things for you, where you're going to get you're going to start with a certain ability, certain items, whatnot. But with other classes, we'll actually change the very selections you have. And I think that was the problem, was that it was too hard to make one set of decisions that would work for every single class. Whereas here, we can make lots of classes. Here I have a document going over in more detail some of these backgrounds the player can choose. Whereas, like I said, Squire's Apprentice, if you choose that as your background, you're going to get Chivalry selected for you as your starting skill. But if you pick, say, the Mysterious Traveler, that is in some ways harder, but also gives a lot more options because you get to select 3 of your own skills and you get to pick 2 perks. And the idea for the perks here, credit to one of our playtesters, Andrew, or I think it goes by Potato, for coming up with this, which is that the perks are actually divided into categories, which makes a lot of sense, where, again, we're allowing decision, but within constraints. So an alchemist would get 1 mental perk. And this helps keep out the nonsense where you're not picking an alchemist and then getting like some huge massive health buff as your perk. We've disallowed that. We're going to divide the perks into categories where we've started to write out some possibilities here. I think this is going to really work well. The question now is laying this out nicely in terms of a user interface, coding it into the game, and then balancing all of these backgrounds because there's so many backgrounds we could do. I'd like to start with a fair number, at least 6, maybe more, maybe 8, maybe 10, we'll see. And then once we release Magic, a bunch more backgrounds there too. This is probably really small on the screen. I wonder if anyone wants to take a look. You can see on release how much it's changed. I'm sure all of this is going to change. All of this is subject to change. This is just some thinking out loud where, yeah, these are the backgrounds, as I said. So happy with this system. I think it's going to really work well. Of course, with anything, you've got to test it out in game. Next up, I'll probably show some of the process for trying to design the UI. Oh, the one issue with this is not too many can fit on the screen, so there need to be a scroll bar. Or maybe the player clicks this and then it expands and opens up. Or maybe we need to lose the sidebar. Or redesign these boxes to go from left to right and then like a really clear scroll bar. This art too is temporary, so there's something there. I would love to have some cool art design, like a card almost. Actually, let me show you 1 second. Hopefully you can see this. These are Rider tarot cards. I love the look of these. How cool would it be? Each class had some kind of art designed like this at some point. I would love to do that, and then imagine like a big picture there, kind of really getting to the aesthetic, like the D&D or RPG. These are Rider tarot cards. I'm going to play with this a bit, see if I can have these different backgrounds fit on the screen better, so that we can fit 8, 10, no problem. Because 2 is just not enough. You know, I just don't think we can make all this fit. It's too much info on the screen. I try to redesign where I move this to the top, the wizard steps, 1, 2, 3. I think it's too much. I think it's going to need an entirely new control. So I'm thinking some kind of list control where an object is selected and then information appears on the right. Here's an example from Windows OS. There's this pane on the left, then you click and it refreshes what's on this pane. And this is useful where you have too much information. It's kind of a tab control, except it's horizontal. So I'm thinking the name of a class will be in some kind of list on the left, and then you click it, and then the information refreshes on the right. Should work. With this view, all the information fits, but I'm not quite happy with the look of it. Something's wrong with the spacing. These don't feel connected. I think what I need to do is look at some other examples and try to copy them, or like see how to make them flow better. Sometime later, I have something I'm much happier with here. The main issue, I think, was because these two sections are connected, they needed some joining panel to say, hey, these are two sub panels. So this is kind of like almost like a UI window, but with this flat look. And I also cleaned up how the top looks here, so it's less in your face, and then the player is just focusing here. And the idea is, as we add more backgrounds for the player to pick, this list would extend and then a scroll bar would appear. It's not as nice as the old one in that it's not using up the entire window, like scaling. Like I had this idea for these cards, and the cards would be boom, 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 and then just fill up the whole window. And this kind of, the sad thing is, because there's only one card visible, if you have a huge resolution, your monitor is going to have this like tiny thing in the middle. I'm not sure how to fix that other than just keep scaling this up to a size. But the nice thing is it creates a uniform experience. You click one, you get to read it, and then the player can click through all of them, read what they want, and then I guess there'll be a continue button down here. And yeah, I think this is the working design now for the character background. I have an update. I've been hard at work programming this. Here's the mock-up in Photoshop. And here's where we are in game right now, which it's coming along. Lots of little details still needed. Icons here, some spacing issues, a hover effect for when you hover the abilities and skills. UI programming is very finicky, to be honest. It's quite annoying, but it'll be worth it to get this done. And I think what I'm going to do is I do like a quicker draft first, like a just good enough, and then so I'll do each of the steps of this wizard and then go back and do another pass. And so next up will be the skill selection and the perk selection. So I've spent some time now trying to redesign step 2 of character creation. Step 2 where the player selects their major and minor skills. I've gone through a few designs. This one was actually quite tricky because we want to show what the player's picking, and we want to show what's already pre-selected, and tooltips need to be possible. So for example, a drop-down wouldn't work because the player should be able to hover items and see the tooltip to get some information about each skill. So if it was a drop-down menu, it doesn't really make sense for it to also have tooltips popping up. With this design, it opens to the right here. You click, opens to the right. It doesn't go to a new page. You still see what you're doing. And this can remain open so the player can see info about each skill. And then I added this yellow border to show, hey, here's what you're dealing with. Should be good. I'm pretty happy with this. And also using the lock sign to indicate this was pre-chosen for your class. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm not sure what honestly would be a better way. We could have maybe separated these into steps. So you choose minor and then major first, and then, or maybe some drag and drop design or something. Not really a fan of that. But yeah, time to implement it. Here we go. Player selects their background. Let's say we choose night. Just for testing, I have here you get to pick 2 minor and 2 major. And here it is. So the way I have the UI is click to select and then opens this side pop-up. Still needs the arrow, still needs to gray out options that are not applicable. You know, the weird thing is the tooltip on an open box still looks kind of funny. Something looks funny about this. Maybe it'll look better with the arrow. I'm not quite sure how to fix it. So the idea is, right, the player would select really quickly, pick all their skills for this build, boom, boom, boom. And these all have the tooltips. Ooh, that's not quite right. But yeah, it's hard. The feel of tooltips is hard to do. It can look a little flickery. Like it's, see what I mean? Like if you see one for a second, it's like, it doesn't feel good. I have them appearing after a delay, 200 milliseconds, to help smooth it out. So if you're moving your mouse, it's not just jumping, but see that? It can create some weird, not quite working right. But in terms of just getting this working as a start, very happy with this. How this works is when it's open, the player has to pick one. If they click anywhere else, it just deselects. I think I'm gonna leave this for now. The other question is, where does the error appear? If they haven't picked one, oh, that's not good. If they haven't picked one, if they leave this blank and they click next, there needs to be an error somewhere. Please select. Lots more to do. Maybe a few fixes and then, or move on to the perk selection.
Can I use this channel to complain about UI programming? Here's what we got. Here is what I have to make this drawing. I'll see you in 4 to 8 hours after a cut.
A really useful technique in game design is separating your data from your actual code. So here's the data of what the perks are going to look like. We might call them traits. It's actually using the format of our abilities, this extra little tag saying what type it is. Perks are coded as abilities. But the idea is you put all your data in XML files, separate files that can be edited at any time, and then you don't have to reprogram, you don't have to like recompile the whole game project each time, and you can send this file to someone else, have them tweak it, work on it, and not have it be interfering with the programming. So here I've just got a few starter perks. There's going to be a lot more of these. That'll be another task, get all these input. All right, huge progress. So let's just go to the whole wizard. We pick our background for a character. Then we pick our major and minor skills. Yes, still some work to do on this page. And now our trait selection, which is coming along nicely. Still some more tweaks and little things, but in general, this is working. The test background that I picked has one combat trait and 3 physical. So the idea is here on the side would be all of the traits, and the player clicks them, and it grays out options that are no longer valid, and then clicks to remove. And the difference here is with this page, the item itself is clicked, and then the player selects it. Or in this page, it's a different design. Like I could have done it where the player clicks here, and it opens up a drop down. But the nice thing about this system, which I really like, is they can see all their options at once. And there's going to be a lot of traits here, and this will be scrollable. The player can see them all at once. Whereas skills, there's not so many. And it didn't really make sense to have a side section here. So just kind of showing some of the little things to decide when working on a UI. We'll say user interface programming, it's some of the most time-intensive work in my opinion, in game dev. Once you have your engine, it's much more engaging, and you can kind of reuse the same patterns as well. Not only is it more interesting to work in that way, but you can just use the same patterns. Where UI, every single pane is different. It has to be kind of handcrafted. But, you know, bit by bit, here's progress. I think this is going to be great, and I think players are going to really enjoy the extra selection options they have to pick their class skills and then to pick their traits. And I guess just now, other than some cleanup, just one more step needed, which would be we don't even have enough traits designed yet. Selecting the character name and maybe an overview page would be nice. Look at this arrow.
It's so good, so crisp and clean. Makes it way better in my opinion. Also fix this issue with the tooltips where they now just don't stick on the screen. The little things can matter a lot in a user interface and the user experience. Like even if they're not consciously noticing it, that little bit of frustration can build when things just don't behave how they should. And oh man, I love that. One last page to design, which is the confirmation page, which I did not have a mock-up for. So here I am designing it in Photoshop. And yeah, I think it's important. If you've gone through a wizard, which is the few steps, and you've made all these choices, you kind of want to see them one last time to confirm what you're getting. It's a bit like a shopping cart, where right before you click checkout, you'd want to see again what you're getting. And yeah, once I got into it, it got a little fiddly. I wasn't sure how to arrange, like where exactly how to lay out this page. One of the things I do, which I recommend to others as well, is if you're stuck in a task that's getting too fiddly, is to give yourself a time limit. So I give myself 15 minutes. Pretend that I was my own boss, which I kind of am. I said, hey, get it done. Now time to program this. Some time has passed and we are there. So the player, they're on the main menu here. They click play game. We load the game and now we're into character creation. And a lot has been done since my last update. The update's actually already gone out, the patch, so everything is in its place. We have the bar showing the progress at the top with each of the character backgrounds. Now all the little details have been done, so all of these, the traits, the skills, the abilities can all be hovered. And a good amount of starting backgrounds. Pretty happy with these, and they're going to, I'm really hoping, provide a good amount of variety in the way the player will approach the game. And also certain playstyles that we want to support. For example, Squire's Apprentice this is more of for new players and help them get into the game, and so they don't make any huge mistakes, so they don't have a huge amount of decisions. You get to start with a useful ability, start with a useful skill that's useful early on, and this should help new players. Whereas if you want to more build your own class type of thing, you can go to the Traveler and you get a lot of decisions. Of course, you do get the drawback of terrible bartering, which I think is hilarious. And yeah, lots of room to even continue to expand this in the future. I think it looks good. I'm super excited about this. I think it's going to add a lot of variety. So we click Squire's Apprentice. We'll pick one. Then we've got our skill selection, which I've shown. And this will grow as we get more skills added. And I don't think it's going to have every skill here. For example, in the future, I would like there to be hidden skills you need to discover later on in the game. So you wouldn't be able to just pick those and say, I'm starting with this skill. But this will grow. I suppose we could consider this our basic skills, and you can only pick basic skills here. And right now there's, how many is there? 6, 7. So I would like a lot more of these, 10, maybe 15, a lot more options coming. But not every skill. There will be some secret skills. We click next, select your traits. Good amount of starting traits. I think there's 7 or 8 for each type. Here we're looking at physical traits. Again, lots of room to add more traits. But I think this will add good variety, and they're pretty strong. Like 10 maximum health that's 10% of your health. And I think we wanted them to be strong because we wanted the decisions to be meaningful. And there probably will be some more balance for these. And also some of them have brand new stats. So some new mechanics to explore, which I am very excited about. And then here we have our confirmation page. The player just gets to double check, look at everything they've done, make sure they're happy, and they enter their name. And this is the final state of the character creation. And now I just want to add in closing and say a bit about this video. I'm trying different approaches. I haven't yet figured out exactly what I want to use this channel for. But I like the idea of making videos, especially while I'm working on a project. So I'm kind of experimenting, trying different things. This time I showed the webcam. I showed a bit of my designing the UI. I'm not sure if I'll keep doing that, or I might do more discussions, Joel and I talking about game design. This is still the early stages, so there's not a lot of risk. Why not try something? Why not try different things? Making videos is fun. And I'm not quite sure if the showing progression with video design works as well as, say,
YouTube videos that are demonstrating like building a log cabin, where there's something really visual, and you can like cut to like building log cabin, like cut to talking. Whereas with these kind of videos, I'm trying to see if it's possible to show game dev progression, and see if I can do different ways of that, time lapses, or if there's something visual to cut to. I don't know if that makes sense. What I'm saying is I'm trying to seek out what kind of content I can do, and it's fun. And so if you got this far, thanks so much for watching, and lots more to come in the Doors of Truthius.